let you go.
Yeah, it's kicking. Waiting for the YouTube page to catch up to us here. All right, I think we're good to go. I want to welcome everybody to the NDI Presents Brown Bag for today. The content today is PPQ&A. Your presenter today is going to be Larry Lee. He's got the slideshow. I'm going to turn over control to him. As you can see on the YouTube page, over to the right side of your page, you should be able to see the questions and answers area. So if you'd like to type a question in there, feel free. If Larry can answer the question online, he'll do so. If I can answer the question for you, I'll do that up as NDI presents. Otherwise, that's it. Larry, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right, thank you. All right, is everybody seeing that now? All right, once again, my name is Larry Lee, and we are doing our brown bag today, and it's on process and product QA, or PPQA for short. Even shorter than that, we'll get down to QA at one point. So anyway, just wanted to say good afternoon, and let's get started on this. So what is PPQA? What is our agenda for the day? Our agenda is we're going to ask the question, what is PPQA? We're going to discuss the purpose of this training. We're going to talk about products, processes, policies and procedures, quality, and how we measure quality. And that'll include things like independence and objectivity, criteria, sampling, test cases, scenarios, and non-compliance. So that's going to be our agenda for the day, and just wanted to kind of go over that. Across the course of this training session, we'll be doing a lot of definitions of these parts because we need to have a good definition of what those parts are so that we can talk about what is involved in Q&A so that you'll understand the what and how. There's a lot of underlying pieces here that we will talk about. So anyway, let's move on here to the next slide. And that is, what is PPQA? As you can see on the screen, it is basically the process of objectively evaluating performed work processes and work products against policies, procedures, standards, requirements, even customer needs, and various other criteria to identify and document any non-compliance issues. PPQA provides feedback to the project staff and to managers on the results of these quality assurance activities. It ensures that non-compliance issues are addressed and tracked. It is also an objective review or test based on a set of criteria against a selected sample of the project's processes and products. Done by an objective and individual or team that is not part of the project being evaluated, and that's very important. That is somebody from the outside looking at this, that's not got their hands involved in the day-to-day of the project. PPQA can be performed at really any stage in the project's life cycle, and it should be performed on a regularly scheduled basis. Instead of just kind of an ad hoc, I will check it today. It really should be set up and scheduled. In short, it is really the assurance of quality of an organization's processes and products. So, well, what is the purpose of this training? Why are we doing this today? Well, it's to better acquaint you all, the staff and the management, to what PPQA is, how it benefits not only NDI as an organization, but really also how it will benefit everyone as we evaluate our processes and, of course, our products so that we retain a high quality value for our customers. This training is really for everyone because quality is not really just a management concern. I know management talks about it more so, but quality is really not just a management concern. It really involves every individual to do quality work at their level. I think all of us really want to seek to strive to have quality work at whatever we do. The purpose is also to understand why we do quality audits. Sometimes it may be regulatory. We do them because it may be customer required. It may be management required, like in our policies and procedures. It may even as well be legally required. It may be that we have certain legal standards we have to uphold to. It's also to understand how we do quality audits. As far as setting a schedule, that kind of thing, determining what we're going to audit, determining audit criteria, physically running the tests, and then evaluating the results, and then getting those results back to management to determine how we're doing in our processes, how are our products coming out. It's also to help remove the fear factor. We always have that fear factor when we hear the word audit, especially when it comes to the IRS. Everybody's blood kind of turns cold and they freeze. As well, other places that can give you the nervousness are like CPAs coming in for your financial audits, or even for a police department, internal affairs, auditing a situation. So for us to do PPQA is to try to take the fear factor out of that. And it's to help remove the blame game, if you will, to stop finger pointing, to open communication so that our processes can be better. And it's to retain process and product quality. We want to continue to keep a high quality. And in order to do that, not only the product, but the processes have to be audited from time to time to make sure that we're staying at a high standard. And it's for better customer satisfaction. So we're going to define some things here. And one of those things that we're going to define is products. What are products? A product is an article or a substance that is manufactured or refined for sale, a thing that is produced by labor, that you do something to make something, something that is either made or grown to be sold or used. It's the result of a process. A quote here from Mountain Goat Software says, I define a product as something physical or not that is created through a process and that provides benefits to a market. So basically, products are those things that we make and sell. For us, it's software. It is software designed to go out to especially government contracts, but for a software developer, it is code. It is that end product that the user can use, and it is what we make and is what we sell. It can also be a component or a sub-product. In other words, a chunk of code from one area may be a product for a chunk of code for another area. Likewise, our software could be a sub-piece for an overall software package. As well, it could be a service or even an idea that is a product. It is made at a cost and sold for a price. It costs us something to do business, to have these processes, to have these resources. There is a cost involved, and then likewise, we sell it for a price. Furthermore, we also need to define processes. Processes are those things that we do to get to having a product. Whatever the product is those things that we do to get to being able to put out a product. It's defined as a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. It's a sequence of interdependent and linked procedures, which at every stage consume one or more resources. And those resources may be employee time, maybe energy, machine, money, and it converts inputs like data or material or parts, whatever, et cetera, into an output. And likewise, another definition is a process is a collection of interrelated work tasks initiated in response to an event that achieves a specific result for the customer of the process. So it's a set of tasks that happen and go about in order to achieve the result of getting the customer's product to them. It's not just, it may be as simple as one task, but it may be very complex and be a multitude of tasks. So the process is not necessarily just a little set of instructions. It may involve a tremendous amount of instructions and interrelated processes in order to get to the end product. Simply put, a process is the conversion of an input into an output. So we have the input of a customer saying, I want this or I need this. We go through a process of whatever we have to do to then bring an output of a finished product to the customer. Customer requirements and needs fit into this category. A process might cross over many functions. It may cross lines even across departments or teams. And it may contain one or more procedures or even procedures from another process entirely. So this is basically what it is that we do to get from what a customer says they want to handing them the finished product. That's what a process is, and that's something that we need to evaluate in PPQA. Are we doing what we say that we do? Are our processes efficient? Are they designed that we may work well and efficiently to get a quality product? Well, the next thing that we'll be looking at is policies and procedures, because we can have a product and a process, but we've got to have something to tell us that how to accomplish those things. First of all, we'll talk about a policy. Policy is a course or principle of action adopted government, an individual or party, or even a business like us. It's a statement of intent, and it is implemented as a procedure or a protocol. And it's clear and simple statements of how our organization intends to conduct its business or its services. They provide a set of guiding principles to help with decision making. So they are basically a set of guiding principles, and they help our senior management, our managers, decisions as to how we need to move resources, money, whatever, in order to get us to where we can work efficiently and have a high quality product. They don't necessarily need to be long. Policies may not be long, drawn out pieces of work. They may just be a couple of sentences. They don't necessarily need to be complicated, but they do need to say what we want to do as an organization. If you were to look at configuration management, we as an organization, NDI, require that every project do configuration management. It can be that simple. It may be more complex, but it can be just that simple. And then you feed into then your procedures and instructions to follow up with that. That leads us then into procedures. Well, what are procedures? Typically, you think of procedures as kind of a set of instructions. If you're going to put together something that you've purchased, you have a set of instructions. Those are basically procedures, how you're going to get to having that item put together. Well, procedures are an established or an official way of doing something. And if you were to go out and look on our Confluence pages, we have separate policies and procedures. So this is an established official way of doing something. It encompasses a series of actions that are conducted in a certain order or manner. And further defined as a fixed step-by-step sequence of activities or course of action that has a defined start and end point. and they must be followed in the same order to correctly perform a task. You can't necessarily do task 10 before you do task 2. So that would throw the whole product into disarray. They further describe how each policy will be put into action in your organization. As we said before, if we take configuration management, we say, well, okay, we have to do this. The policy says we have to do it. The procedures then tell us how we're going to do it. And so it's important that we understand how policies and procedures work. The policy is the overarching statement that says, we are going to do this as a company. Going to have to do this. And the procedures then go about telling the project team, this is how you do this. So basically it describes the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Sounds like a journalism thing here of accomplishing a task. That's the same idea when you're writing this story for journalism. You want to ask these questions or answer these questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how are we going to accomplish this task? It gives an order of steps to take, and it can give us oftentimes the forms and documents that we use as part of our process in order to make our product. It may involve the use of forms, checklists, instructions, instruction manuals, even flowcharts, a whole host of things that it may involve as you write procedures, as you follow procedures. They may be very detailed, or they may just be a few bullet points. Another phrase for them or term for them can be called a function. So it's important. Procedures are very important. They are our roadmap, if you will, to how you go and do the things that you need to do to make that product. So we've defined now all these things. We've talked about what a product and a process are, what a policy and a procedure is, and why we would even do PPQA. So let's go on and talk about quality. What is quality? That's a difficult definition. Sometimes that's very subjective, and you may find that to be the case with customers. They think they know what they want, and they may not necessarily know that they wanted that when you could hand them the finished product. Sometimes it's defined as of the customer. It can also be defined as a measure of excellence, or a state of being free from defects, deficiencies, or significant variations. It's brought about by strict and consistent commitment to certain standards that achieve uniformity of a product by a specific customer or user requirements. This is very important. This is very much hits at what we do. We take what the customer tells us that they want to have, and we go about looking at our corporate policies and procedures, and we try to stick to strict processes, strict procedures, and we stick to a commitment to do them, not to vary from them, not to say, well, I think I can do it a better way. That would have to be adopted and fit into a new policy or procedure. But if we stick to doing things strictly and consistently, then we can measure that when it comes time to look at the product and make sure that we're putting out quality product. By having a quality process, these are strict and consistent things, and that helps us to be free from defects and deficiencies. We all know about getting a product that has a defect in it, or you use it for a while and it becomes deficient and doesn't work right, or it doesn't even work at all like the advertising stated. So we're trying to avoid having that. So we stick to very strict standards, and we then can do it time and time again the same way, so that we can keep our customer satisfied and what we give them and what they've asked for and what their requirements are. So furthermore, it is also defined as ISO 9000 defines quality as the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills a need or expectation that is stated. generally it's implied or obligatory. And it is basically making sure that the whole organization is fit and effective. As we are coming into this CMMI audit, which we've been talking about for several weeks now, that's in essence what we're doing, making sure the whole organization is fit and effective as we come into this audit. EPQA is part of that audit. So we're defining quality. We're seeking to make sure that we're fit and effective, that we're meeting the expectations of our customer, of our management and stakeholders in general, that we're meeting those expectations. We're keeping things at a high quality level. It's about making organizations perform for their stakeholders. And that can be a variety of stakeholders, not just necessarily customers. It needs to perform well for employees. We need to be able to work effectively. It needs to work well for managers. Managers need to have the information so that they can make decisions. So it's about making organizations perform for their stakeholders. And it is a constant pursuit of excellence. We seek to continue to have an excellent product. We seek to continue to keep our standards high, to keep constantly evaluating our processes and our products so that we not only maintain where we are, but that we would also improve, that we would give them a better product. We would have better processes. So it's about a constant pursuit of excellence, and that's what we are seeking to do. It provides a degree of excellence. It's not only conformance to requirements. It's an internal desire to want to do things well. It's the totality of characteristics that we kind of act in totality to satisfy a need. It keeps us fit for use and fit for a purpose. And as far as keeping us free from defects, that's certainly the main thing that we're looking at, is that we don't put out a defective product, that we don't have a defective process. We want to have things done in a consistent manner, and to do them well so that we provide our customers with what they need. And it helps in delighting our customers. They're looking for X, Y, and Z in a product. We want to give them X, Y, and Z, but why not also give them A, B, and C as well? So we want to continue to strive for excellence. American management guru Peter Drucker says this about quality. He says, quality in a product or service is not what the supplier puts in. It is what the customer gets out and is willing to pay for. So often we say something is worth something, but it's only worth that if the customer is willing to pay that. So basically, customers really judge quality through their perceptions. And oftentimes we elicit customer feedback and surveys. Places do surveys and customer feedback questionnaires and all those kinds of things, because we ultimately need to please them. And the customer's perceptions sometimes are very subjective and very difficult to measure. So defining and measuring quality can be a very difficult thing. So quality is what we're striving for. Then what we need to do is to be able to measure quality. EPQA is all about measuring quality of processes and quality of products. Measuring quality is process or is specification driven. Does it meet the set requirements? Does it match up to what the customers have said? Does it match up to any regulatory requirements? Does it match up to our policies and procedures? We measure those against those kinds of things. It can be measured at the start of the life of a project. You can start measuring processes as soon as the project starts. Are they doing it the way they're supposed to be doing it? Is the procedure correct? So really measuring quality is something that can be done all the way through the life cycle of a project. It needs to be observable by the number of rejects from customers or the number of defects found during testing procedures. Measuring quality is about measuring both product and process. And the measurement of quality, whether it be the product or the process, requires collecting and analyzing information that's usually stated in terms of different measurements and metrics. So how do we do that? What do we need to do PPQA to measure quality? Well, here's some additional definitions and things that need to happen. There needs to be objectivity and independence. Objectivity means a lack of bias or judgment or prejudice. This is why we said earlier that someone doing PPQA should not be a part of the project team. There should be an outsider. They can be in the same company, but not someone directly involved with the project. They may even be someone from outside the company. They may be someone that's an outside firm that comes in and measures your quality. So that way it takes away any bias, any judgment, prejudice, emotion, those kinds of things. It's a reliance on verifiable evidence. We want to run tests to have evidence of whether the product or the process is working correctly or is a good product. So we can look at verifiable evidence, objective evidence. It's an evaluation based on criteria and not on emotions. We certainly wouldn't want somebody that's coming in that works for the project and is in a bad mood or have some other emotion that would skew the results of the evaluation. And it is critical for successful evaluations to be objective. We certainly do not want to have subjective testing because then that's put up to the whim of the tester. It needs to be objective, it needs to be consistent, it needs to be uniform. As far as that goes, the second piece of that is independence. Not only objective, but independent. That way it keeps us complete freedom of influence from any outside people or parties. If someone on a project is evaluating the project, they may have specific interests that they're looking out for, and that could very easily mess up the results. As well, it's not tied to or part of the project being evaluated. That keeps it independent, keeps, as we said, objective, and it avoids any possible conflicts of interest. The other piece to this is criteria. We measure using criteria. Those criteria are principles or standards by which something is judged or decided upon. What is the basis of the evaluation or the measuring stick, if you will? Well, those things listed in here are some of the things that can be tested against. Customer requirements or needs. Certainly we know when we start a project, we sit down with the customer and we determine what they say their requirements and needs are for our software for it to work correctly for them. They tell us what they feel that they need, and we listen to that, and we develop our processes based upon that. We evaluate on those requirements and needs. Is it working the way that they have asked for it to work? It very well may be, basis may be laws or regulations. We may have to do certain things. As well, standards. There may be outside standards like ISO or one of those kinds of standards that we're seeking to stay inside of. As well, our own policies and procedures, which we've already talked about, can be the basis of evaluation and certainly should be. And furthermore, our product descriptions, our process instructions, as well are measuring sticks by which we evaluate our process and our product. We use these kinds of things to determine how we're going to test, how we're going to evaluate or audit ourselves. So these are the things we look for: objectivity, independence, and criteria in order to set up our testing, our audits, if you will. And these are very important pieces so that we get the most accurate results possible. Right. Another important piece here as measuring quality is concerned is sampling. Any of you that have had any kind of statistical classes would understand sampling. It's a process used in statistical analysis in which a predetermined number of observations are taken from a larger population. So in other words, you're not saying, okay, I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to look at every product you put out, in which case that may not be that difficult. But in some cases on such a manufacturing line, that can be very difficult to look at every product. It is the process of selecting units from a population of interest so that by studying the sample, we can then come back and generalize our results back to the entire population from where they were chosen. So we take a small sample out of it, we test that, and the results of that test should tell us how well the entire line is doing, in other words. So it's basically determining what will be evaluated, how many will be evaluated, so that we're not trying to necessarily evaluate everything. We pick a sample of it. Likewise, sampling can be done in several different ways. It can be a random number generator. We say, okay, we're going to pick number 1 and number 7 and number 29 just at random. Or it can be batched. It can be, we're going to do items 15 through 20 out of this set. It may be in a series. We may do a series of tests, a series of samples. We may do 10 from here and 10 from there and 10 from another. It may be the entire line, depending upon the organization and what they do. It may be the entire line. For us, it technically is the entire line as far as the project is concerned. We really do test the entire project, in essence. Likewise, we could set a sequence. We could do every 10th one or every 20th one or every 5th one, that kind of thing. So there's different ways sampling can be done. Sampling in that way is really more effective against product than it is process. But some portions of process can be sampled that way. Some process artifacts, for example, meeting notes or retrospectives, change management logs, those kinds of things. You can pick a sample of those and do that kind of thing. But typically this kind of sampling, this kind of testing is more effective against product than process. As well, it allows us to generalize back to the total population the results of the evaluation of that sample. So in order not to test everything, you can say, okay, well, I tested these 10 items, they all came back really good. So we're assuming, if you will, that the entire line is going well. And the only way we'd know differently is we get customer returns. At that point, we start to get information back as well. But as far as doing internal audits of PPQA, by doing a sample of products, we can say in general, well, I've tested these many out of this line, and I think the results were really good, so I think the line is good. However, incorrect sampling can really skew the results. We can give false and erroneous reports of quality. So the sample really needs to be a good representation of the population so that we don't bring back false reports. Either way, we don't want to bring back false positives and we don't want to bring back false negatives. There's no sense in going back and doing extra work because we weren't careful to sample correctly. Likewise, we don't want to go off just in a cloud thinking we're doing great when we didn't check correctly and we were really doing poorly. So doing sampling correctly is very, very important. Well, that leads us really to the nuts and bolts of this, measuring quality, how it's done, how we go about doing it. And that's done by way of doing test cases, scenarios, and then reporting back on non-compliance. So now that we've defined and discussed all these underlying pieces of PPQA, or QA for short, this is really the kernel of PPQA, setting up these test cases and scenarios. Once a project gets started and kind of begins to start to put forth product, as I said before, you can even test the process. Even before product starts to come out, you can test the process. But even furthermore, once it starts to put forth product, it's important to examine or evaluate the quality of the product against the process or processes to make it. It's also equally important to evaluate and examine the process or processes against all the requirements to verify that they're viable and that we put out a quality product and that they're being adhered to. It's very, very important. So then PPQA is done by way of audits that examine both process and product by source criteria. It's not, we just pick up the product off the line and say, I'm going to look at this and then, put it back down. We have a specific set of instructions for doing QA, the same thing as we have instructions for building a product. We have instructions for doing QA. We have guidelines, we have criteria, we have standards that we look at, test against to see how we're doing. Those criteria are formulated into audit test cases and scenarios, and to be done as real world as possible. To determine if the product is meeting our customer needs, requirements, and expectations. We want to satisfy our customers. So that's what we're looking to do, and that's why we do QA, is to make sure that what we're putting out is meeting their needs, meeting their expectations, keeping the customer happy. Audit cases are set up and scheduled, or they should be, and they are performed against both process and product so that we can, if the product's not coming out right, there's some reason why. So we need to look at the process as well and make sure that the process is effective and correct. So any instance where a process or a product do not conform to the agreed upon standards, that is called a non-compliance issue. And we deal with that even as in what we do. It's usually dealt with through JIRA as oftentimes a bug that comes back. Something in the code didn't work correctly, and it gets kicked back. It's not compliant. So fix it and get it back into compliance with the standards that we've agreed upon and that we've talked about in the first part of this session. So every non-compliance issue is to be logged. So we need to have it logged, and likewise, it's sent to the appropriate individual who owns it to fix it, and then the issue is tracked all the way to completion so that our compliance gets achieved, that we get back into compliance with what we're doing. It's really easy to point out non-compliance issues, but it's highly important that they're followed up on and that they get completed, that they get fixed. We want to stay away from just the finger pointing. We want to actually work together to make sure that the problem, the non-compliance, gets fixed. So that's very highly important that we follow up on them, we track them, we keep them in our forethought so that we can keep coming back to it and saying, is this fixed? Because if we don't fix it, then we're putting out a defective product. Well, as we come to an end of this, audits and fixes are typically very iterative to keep an organization on track for high quality. We want to continue to keep going through the cycle of looking at what we're doing and what we're putting out so that we can make sure that we're doing our very best, that we're giving the customers what they want to have, and that we're informing our management so that they can make the decisions necessary to keep our product, keep our process keep our organization a high quality organization. So this is the reason that we do PPQA. And as it turns out, to get to doing PPQA, we're living in a test environment, test world that's to be set up as real world as possible, so you can see if what you're doing is making sense, if it's actually working. And excuse me, likewise then following up on it, making whatever fixes so that we hand the customer a good product. That is all that I have today, and wanted to open it up if anybody has any questions, to let me know. Well, I hope you all have a great day, and we will hope you have a few minutes left of your lunch hour, and hope you have a great day.
All right, Larry, thank you very much. As stated, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and continue to post them, and we'll get to them. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you very much, and be on the lookout for the next offering of NDI Presents.